Approximately 30 years ago, the Sahrawi people were expelled by Morocco from their homeland of the Western Sahara, a former Spanish colony. They were forced to flee their country, many on foot, and seek refuge in southwestern Algeria in the inhospitable Hamada Desert. The boundaries of the Western Sahara were defined by France and Spain, drawn up with little consideration for inherent communal and cultural differences.
Hace muy poco, hasta los principios de los 90, todo el enfoque cultural, social, tenía un solo sentido: la guerra y el proceso de independencia. Y entonces pasa con la música, la poesía, con todo, la vida, toda la vida tenía un solo sentido: morir por un ideal.
This is a reoccurring theme throughout the vast African continent, where colonizing powers carved up Africa, resulting in the definitive lines that outline present-day African states. Frontiers that are, however, indiscernible to nomadic African tribes.
Era gente que buscaban el pasto y la lluvia, dependían solo de eso. Su vida solo dependía de la lluvia, de las nubes.
Western Sahara is part of the Travel Bidan, which encompasses not only the Western Sahara, but includes Mauritania, parts of Morocco, Algeria, and Mali.
Y la gente no hace nada para quedarse, ¿no? Este es un lugar transitorio, pero y en eso llevan ya 30 años. Es mucho tiempo para tener las maletas preparadas para un viaje de regreso.
Our expedition began in the wilaya, or town, of Al-Said. We couldn't help but observe, with intrigue, these rough level areas and bare rocks, typical of this Hamada desert. The landscape was fascinating, but at the same time, there was an overwhelming realization of the harshness of life for the Sahrawis in this environment. For us, what lay ahead would be an intense period of discovery about a culture and a community that the world has all but forgotten, or in most cases chosen to ignore. That very afternoon we were introduced to a young guitarist, Ahmed Zein. It was easy to picture him as an Iwi 400 years ago. In the old classist societies, the Iwi were the caste of musicians that constituted the lowest class in the Bedouin society, along with blacksmiths, Jewish descendants, and slaves. They were generally referred to as snaga. In this period, musicians did not only fulfill the role of entertaining. An Igui had to be familiar with the hereditary lineage of members of the higher classes. In this way, he venerated the affluent and earned his living. All that in the Igui was required to know was passed down orally from his predecessors. Although a musician, today Ahmed does not have to earn his living in this way. After the particularly brutal invasion by Morocco and their subsequent expulsion from their territory, the Sahrawis abolished the system of social classes. Ahmed fortunately had a small sum of money at his disposal, thanks to the fact that he was one of the few musicians of the wilaya of Al-Said. Ahmed explained how his first guitar was a self-forged contraption, comprising of a wooden stick and 2 strings. With this personalized guitar, he attempted to recreate the music he would hear on radio. Later, when attending weddings and social gatherings, he never partook in the festivities. He simply sat back and scrutinized how the guitarist played. Back home, he would try to reproduce these sounds on the guitars he had heard. to which his family responded by asking how he had learned to play such beautiful music. Ahmed recalls how his family often laughed and commented on how one day he would become a great musician. That unwitting prophecy has come to pass. Women in the Bedouin society have a special role in music. Saharawi women are, however, anything but common. They are different to their sister kin in the rest of the Arabic world. For one, they are extraordinarily emotionally strong, self-reliant, and share relative equality with their male counterparts. In this society, the female voice has always been much more appreciated than that of their male compatriots. Rich men in the Travel-Udan will pay generous sums of money to be serenaded by a renowned female vocalist. Sweta, a talented local singer, will travel an arduous 170 kilometers across the desert to Dakhla to perform her repertoire upon request. The Travel-Udan is the only place in the Arabic Islamic world where women are permitted to play instruments. One of which is the Ardin, a 12 to 16 stringed harp-like instrument. The first reference to the Ardin is that of the French explorer Sieur de la Cour. Made in 1685, his early depictions and descriptions accurately describe this fascinating instrument. Apart from playing the Ardin, women are responsible for the rhythmic section in a musical ensemble. For this, they adopt a unique hand-clapping style and produce rhythms with the tawal, a traditional animal hide drum. The instruments of the Travel-Udan do not originate from the Arab world. Instruments such as the tirinit and the tawal were in fact introduced from sub-Saharan Africa. In the classist societies of old, poets occupied one of the highest classes. It was the poets who were responsible for recitals and citations. The creative use of text and citation of verse are much appreciated in Muslim society. Lueli Bade Abdallahe Salem is the man who gave us an insight into the relationship between poetry and Saharawi music. For it is the poet who decides in which musical mode a poem will be sung.
والمستفعلة الثالثة من 4 حركات، الأولى من 7 حركات والثانية من 4 حركات والثالثة من 7 حركات وعلى نفس القافية وفم تجي.
The Sahrawis are in fact descendants of travelers who crossed the vast expanse of the Sahara from Yemen. Whole music emanated from the Travel-Udan over 400 years ago. The link between the peoples of the Travel-Udan is the Hassaniya language, a language which was introduced to the region during the first waves of the Islamic influence in the 7th century. The arrival of the Beni Hala and Beni Hassan tribes during this period contributed immensely to social changes in the region.
وعاقب ذاك اللي نعطونا نماذج ثانية من الشعر اللي يعني اللي عاد متناول والله متداول اليوم، فهمتني؟ اللي عاد تقولوا الناس اليوم باش يعرف إنسان مقارنة.
Whole literally means the art of the word.
اكتشف هذا البحر راجل من تكنة
Within whole, there are 7 different musical modes, termed bors, which simply means seas. It appears rather ironic that they would call these modes seas, when they live in the most arid of regions, so far from the sea. The modes are perceived in this way because each one has a unique characteristic intensity. Remembering too that before their expulsion, Sahrawis lived on the shores of the Great Atlantic. To understand the present state of music in these refugee camps, we have to look to the past. The order of a traditional recital of the musical modes is Entemas, Sinekar, Fagu, Skaya, Lebor, Leyen, Leptate, and an additional mode, Sudan or Lera. Entemas is the first of these modes. It is a perfect fusion of the Arabic and sub-Saharan melodies, and is characterized by the improvisation of the rest of the modes. It's really quite difficult to grasp the concept of scales in whole. The intervals between notes are different depending on whether a melodic line ascends or descends. For example, singers will use pentatonic melodies on ascending notes and more melismatic styles on descents. Here, many musicians are self-taught, facilitating a very personalized and unique style of performance. Sinekar is one of the more difficult modes to conceive. Problems arise when trying to relate this mode to more familiar scales. As we discovered, the only way to appreciate the Sinekar style is to let oneself go, allowing the musician to guide you through its curious progressions. In the case of Sinekar, one begins to appreciate that it is not solely the idea of grasping a musical scale, but trying to understand the concept of a culture in exile. In Sinekar, rhythms are much more punctuated compared to other modes. Fagu is the musical mode that was used in battle in the Trouble We Done, played to incite warriors during times of conflict. The author, Baroka, describes how, when they heard Fagu, even the horses braced themselves for battle. Even the most timid of them felt their blood begin to boil. Gradually, the music developed from songs of victory and defeat to paying homage to the courage of various tribes and communities. Today, Sahrawis use Fagu to extol martyrs who died during the conflict with Morocco. Fagu is also the musical mode that quite literally brings Sahrawis to their feet. Fagu, there are 3 distinct dances: Lebleda, Chahar, and Seret, each one developing in tempo and intensity. These hand movements of the dancers supposedly mimic the graceful gaiting of camels as they travel through the desert sands. In Fagu, the dancing increases progressively in speed and intensity. Fagu is especially significant to poets, not only because of the historical quotations that it contains, but also the 11 unique forms of writing in Fagu. Skaya, the 4th mode, would appear to be a natural transition from the more militant Fagu. Skaya is a mode sweeter and more intimate in nature. Here, Ali Seibda sings Skaya to his daughter. Next is Leboer, a mode that is rooted in mysterious dark semitones. Rapid notes and tremolos in the lower range that have a particular way of captivating an audience. This is one of the only modes that continues to use ancestral playing methods. In the Travel Bidan, the pentatonic major scale is called Layen. In the traditional Hal, Layen is the only mode which is sung in classical Arabic. The songs are of al-Waka, Arabic for nostalgia. Themes in Layen often include songs of love and sorrow. However, today many of the young musicians begin their layan repertoire with a variety of revolutionary songs. It is in fact the most commonly used mode in modern Saharawi music. The last mode in the traditional repertoire is lebtoit. A typically traditional bore in whole, it is the slowest mode in rhythm. Lerar, commonly referred to as Sudan, is not strictly speaking part of the classical whole repertoire. It is, however, very popular in the refugee camps. A characteristic dance in this mode is the chawada. Chawada means exorcism. In the travel bidan, it is the lerar mode which most incorporates sub-Saharan influences. Within Islam, there have been many interpretations of the Quran's view on music. The Taliban in Afghanistan banned music because they claimed that music distracted the path to the Prophet. This is a very specific and extreme example. It would be rather obtuse to generalize a religion as being oppressive, solely because in some Islamic states, controls are absolute and perhaps brutal. It is thus difficult to talk generally about the religious perspectives towards music, especially in the case of Islam, whose interpretations vary across the globe. What is certain is that music has always played an important role in religious ceremony. Humans are always prescribed to the idea of a supernatural being, and have always used music and lyrics to praise and make contact with God. Medech is a religious singing style that highlights the connection between humans and God. Bara, an old Saharawi woman who explained to us much about religious music, would not sing Medech unless completely spiritually inspired. Medech is an ancestral way of singing to Allah, probably the oldest since the Islamification of the travel bidan. Medech was handed down after the death of the Prophet to his 4 disciples, Abu Bakr ibn Sadiq, Umar ibn Khattab, Osman ibn Affan, and Ali ibn Abi Talib. Once Bara had enlightened us to many intriguing religious concepts, she began to sing in Medech. I love my Prophet, I love my Prophet. When Allah raises his sword to the enemy, his blow will be faster than that of a flying javelin. When he arrives at the battlefield, the unfaithful will flee or be destroyed. I love my Prophet with all my being. In times of difficulty, he opens his doors. Traditionally, Medech was sung on Thursday, before the sacred day. Various individuals told us how Medech was once accompanied by the zagrit, tabal, and clapping. Now it is solely accompanied by percussion. It is believed that where there is Medech, there are no evil spirits, and lately it has been associated with exorcisms. Here is another example of the ever-changing religious practices within the refugee camps. We came across this stone circle which outlines an imaginary mosque. It was the end of Ramadan. Within the stone circle, there was no ordained individual performing tajweed, an important method of reciting the Quran. This role has been taken over by the local radio station. After the death of the Spanish dictator Franco, Morocco invaded the mineral-rich Western Sahara in 1975. In 1991, the Polisario Front in Morocco agreed to a ceasefire as part of a UN settlement plan. For the past 14 years, the UN has been involved in finding a peaceful resolution to the conflict through the organization of a referendum on self-determination. However, despite numerous reaffirmations of the referendum proposal by the UN Security Council, Morocco continues to prevent the referendum from taking place. While the Baker framework for a resolution on Western Sahara status has been practically impotent. During 30 years of occupation, the Sahrawis have conducted their struggle for freedom within international norms, never using terrorism to attract attention to their plight. Libya, Algeria and Cuba are among the few countries that give practical assistance to the Sahrawis, allowing young prospective Sahrawi doctors, nurses and teachers to study within their borders. Such contact outside the confines of these refugee camps has led to fusion of traditional hol with African styles, as well as reggae, jazz and a wealth of other musical genres. This modern music is known as Alfen al-Asri, which in contrast to traditional hol, makes reference to revolution, love and admiration for the Prophet. One night we came across a lively young poet, Abdullah Hamdi Sinema. Abdullah described his poetry as a view on the world from a Sahrawi perspective. This is a form of poetry that takes into account the aspirations of an entire community rather than expressing the poet's personal emotions. He affirms that his poetry takes into account news from Algeria, Radio Nacional and the BBC. The following day we met another poet, Luali Leksan.
Diferentes. El poeta antes, en la época de la guerra, cantaba a un alma colectiva, nosotros. Es decir, él incluido dentro de mucha gente, con un dolor parejo para todo el mundo, con problemas parejos para todo el mundo, y él dentro de esa gente ponía en verso el sentimiento colectivo. Esta es una poesía mucho más personal, es decir, es una reflexión hacia el interior de uno mismo y las heridas en el cuerpo personal del que escribe, es decir, y creo que llega más, porque cuando individualizas los sentimientos se explican mejor, ¿no? Pero tus padres se acuerdan de donde uno nació, ¿no? Y me dicen que fue en un lugar que se llama Rugare, algo así como los tunales del sueño, es poético, ¿no? Sí. Y entonces siempre me ha gustado volver a ese lugar. No he podido volver porque está detrás de los muros, ¿no? Algún día iré, ¿no? Dormir un sueño sin primaveras postergadas, sin cláusulas de perdón incumplidas y despertarme en tu vientre tirs. Espantar la soledad con un abanico de versos inspirados por tu inmensidad. Vaciar mi alma en la bondad de tu alma. Repasar la memoria del universo en la poesía de tus paisajes. y escuchar el eco de tus montañas, la gloria de tu pasado, los ruidos de la infancia del mundo, el galope de una caravana sobre el cristalino rostro de sus llanuras, y sentir la paz que los dioses cincelaron con bondad en tu rostro de mar al que se le congelaron las olas.
Even though subjected to living in refugee camps, there's been a pronounced development of whole and modern music. Alif Seibda is one singer who creates songs fusing Western styles with whole, singing in Spanish and Hassaniya. Ahmed and Bepa are two other musicians who play at weddings and national events. Their songs, like those of Ali Seibda, have a popular following in the camps. An appreciation for the introduction of new styles while maintaining traditional undertones. Recently, Saharawi music has begun reaching a wider audience outside the camp's confines. However, the harsh reality is that Saharawi musicians hardly ever see any financial benefit. A minute percentage of sales abroad is given to the Ministry of Culture in the camps, but not to the musicians. Many of the musicians told us that they are now aware of how foreign record companies have capitalized on Saharawi ignorance towards contracts, leaving musicians without remuneration. Music is an essential tool for the survival of the Sahrawi people while subjected to life in these refugee camps. While the music entertains, motivates and educates, it is a constant reminder of Sahrawi heritage, a way to grieve and pay homage to fallen comrades, a link to their homeland.
Pueblo mío, que estás en la colina, tendido como un viejo que se muere. Las penas y el abandono son mi triste compañía. Pueblo mío, te dejé sin alegría. Mis amigos se fueron casi todos. Los otros partirán después que yo. Lo siento porque amaba su agradable compañía. Pueblo mío, te dejé sin alegría. ¿Qué será? ¿Qué será? ¿Qué será? ¿Qué será de mi vida? ¿Qué será? Si las noches mi guitarra tristemente sonará y una niña saharaui no llorará. ¿Qué será? ¿Qué será? ¿Qué será? ¿Qué será de mi vida? ¿Qué será?